Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Tuesday as we watch this strong upper air storm rotating around along the Carolina coast and slowly moving its way northward. And you can see the very well-defined upper air circulation here as moisture gets pulled up to the north and northwest along the coastline. And it's all being swept northward right up into parts of upstate New York and even into interior New England. And you can see it on the radar at the moment. That first band of rain overnight kind of expanded as it went further north, and now that's moved into areas in upstate New York, western New York, into central and northern New England. And you got this gap with some developing rain and downpours coming in from off the ocean. And here we have more rain showers as we look to the south and east coming in and moving northwestward. So this is going to be moving in for this afternoon. It's funny because the weather models yesterday had this, pretty much up to just north of New York City by 11 a.m. And it looks like it's about 100 or so miles slower, but still getting to the same place at the end of the day. And as we look to the south now, the rotation of the upper air system is fairly evident here. But it's not like yesterday where we had this huge area of rainfall. That has diminished some because the upper air storm is beginning to weaken in terms of its scope and intensity. And much of the moisture that's being produced is being produced from off the ocean as it lifts up, all that moisture lifts up northwestward toward the coastline and beyond. So I think it's still going to be a fairly substantial rainfall on the order of 1 to 2 inches. So let's look at the short range here for the HRRR model. And as we go through the afternoon, you can see the heavier downpours that come into New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania on up to New York City and over parts of Long Island. It's kind of tough with these things because you get these areas of rain. It rains heavy for, you get these heavy rain bursts for a short period of time, and then some areas get them, but some don't. Then there's a bit of a break, and then there's another surge coming in from overnight. So we're at now 2 or 3 a.m. We're still getting these waves of rain coming in to the coastline. And when we look at the HRRR's rainfall totals from this, sometimes it can be a little deceptive when you look at how the radar echoes shape up and you think, well, that doesn't look like a whole lot of rain. But when we look at the total accumulated precip, you can see these white streaks, the model, the convective nature of some of these downpours. So you get these spots where you get into these bands where somebody winds up with 2 inches or more in these small areas. You can see them kind of streaky across New Jersey into New York City and the Hudson Valley. And then you get other areas that get less and get half as much in the darker blues. So I think you're going to see that kind of variability. But I still sort of hold to the idea that in general, it's going to be, most places are going to wind up with 1 to 2 inches of rain before this is all said and done. Now we'll look at what the outlook is for the east, and then we'll take a look at the west. We'll go to the last run of the GFS from overnight. The new run is not out yet. We'll put the surface map on, and we'll see where we're going with all this. So one of the longer-term issues has been for the weekend. We know things are going to get warm once this all pulls out. The question of whether an onshore flow sets up in some places, particularly from New York City northward. New York City south of New York City, I don't think it's going to be a problem. And those areas are going to be into the 80s this weekend. But areas to the north, we're going to have to be a little bit careful. Now, that low, you can see how the surface low weakens here as we go through the rest of today. There's the low at the moment forecast for 2 p.m. right along the surface low along the North Carolina coast. And then it just kind of opens up and runs to the northeast because the whole upper feature is decreasing. In the meantime, when we look out in the lower Mississippi Valley here, with this trough that's swinging eastward and low pressure developing on it, there might be some severe weather issues late this afternoon and this evening across from Arkansas into southeastern Missouri and eventually extending up into eastern Illinois and Indiana. You can see it there. This is a weather front that's approaching the East Coast for Thursday night and Friday, but look how weak it is. Once it gets to the coast, it kind of falls apart. The reason why is you've got this big upper high that's building, so there's no support. these weather systems come into that big ridge and they just die. So now we're into Friday, and the flow is basically southwest. We're in this situation here with these cold fronts that they're so weak that the air ahead of it is almost the same as the air behind it. So we actually get warmer after they go by. That does happen on occasion, especially in the spring. Now we're going into Friday night and Saturday, and I just want to point out severe weather outbreak Saturday for southern Illinois down through Missouri, southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, back into eastern Oklahoma and East Texas. I think there could be a serious severe weather outbreak here this weekend. And then it extends up into Illinois and Indiana. Now, here's the problem for Saturday, at least as far as the east is concerned, and for Sunday. So here's our front, okay? And this is Saturday afternoon. At this point, we are, for the most part, for the Hudson Valley and points southward down into through New Jersey and Pennsylvania, you're in a west-southwest flow. So I think this means that Saturday, we'll probably see 80s. To the north, here's that northeast wind, northeast flow, and cooler air. And it looks to me, at least on the overnight run anyway, that front wants to go by, and at least initially. So by Sunday, this is Sunday morning, you've got a developing low in eastern Missouri. You've got this another severe weather outbreak Saturday night into Sunday morning, all through here. On up from the Gulfs, the coast of Texas and western Louisiana, going all the way up along the Mississippi River to near St. Louis and into central Illinois. The cold front here in the east is going to look something like this. So it looks like it may want to backdoor its way down into southern Delaware or to the Delmarva Peninsula, in which case Sunday could wind up being more like 60s, with the 80s being suppressed much further to the south. So this is just a typical springtime look to it. And by the way, notice on the western edge here, a little bit of snow does pop up, which is always interesting for snow lovers, even if we're just about into May. So aside from the fact that is going to be, if that backdoor does get that far south, it does eventually come back up as a warm front. So we're going to get back into the warmer air. Maybe not so much on Sunday, it'll be a fight, but Monday, as that's low, model wants to have a pretty deep low into southern Wisconsin and develops some snow on the northern western fringe of this. We're going to be seeing this rather strong front approaching the East Coast, so that's going to probably mean for some showers and thunderstorms at some point late Monday night into Tuesday. In fact, you can see it here. I wonder whether this might argue for a possible severe weather event in the Northeast come Monday, late Monday night, with that cold front coming through like that. I think it's possible. And then after that, it turns cooler before the next low runs to the Great Lakes as we move through the latter part of next week. So let me just look at the temperatures profile here, just so that we can illustrate what the whole deal is with this backdoor situation for the weekend. And let me put the 2-meter temperatures up, and we'll go back. So let me just roll it back. Okay, so here we go. So our low, after tomorrow, I think we'll be back into the 60s tomorrow. Might even get up close to 70 in some places. And then we are into the 70s on Thursday. By the way, these are snapshots at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. It doesn't necessarily mean that those are the high temperatures. The high temperatures could certainly wind up being a few degrees higher than what's being indicated. But you can see this pretty large area of 70s goes all the way up into upstate New York. And then Friday, we're in the 70s everywhere, 80s down in Virginia. And now here's Saturday. I think, will be the very warm day, where you're going to have 80s, I think, punching all the way up to about Boston. And it could certainly be every bit of, numbers could certainly be low by a few degrees. So I think it could be something like 80 to 85, not impossible. Now here's Sunday. Look at the difference for Sunday. If you're going to have a backdoor front that winds up being down here someplace, so now we're talking 60s here and 80s here. So the models are certainly arguing for the idea that backdoor front, that the warmest day will just be the one day on Saturday and then done. And then, of course, it backs up as a warm front again. And you can see, by the way, you see how the temperature lines up here? Just look at how the the isotherm, we're going to draw the 60-degree isotherm. It's like this, okay? So if you look, that's probably how your surface map is going to look. Here's your cold front, and here's how, your warm front. I probably have the warm front too far, but you get the general idea here. When we match it up with the surface, which I can't really do with leaving that, we'll flip it back and forth, but I'm going to take this off and just jump real quick, and you can see, what the surface looks like, and you see it right here. See, there's the front, and your warm front is, here's your cold front, and here's your warm front, like that. So you saw how the temperature profile is. I have that cold front. Let me draw it a little better than this. Kind of a bit of a trigger finger here. So let's see if I can fix this. So here's actually where your cold front is. That's much better. And there's your warm front. So you saw how the temperature profile was with the 60s or better in that finger that moved up the eastern seaboard, and how it matches up well with the warm front and the cold front. So that takes care of the east. Let's look at what's happening out in the west. And it looks like some interesting times setting up in the western states. But before we look at what the models are doing, I want to look at the satellite of the West Coast, and let me just refresh it so we get something new, if it will pop up for me. Okay, so here's our storminess in the Rockies that is occurring right now, with the moisture headed up there. Look at this jet that comes into across the Pacific, still continuing to bring moisture into Northern California and into the Pacific Northwest on a regular basis. And with respect to the radar, let's see if we can go out west and see what's happening. I'll unwiden it out so we can take a wider view. And we got this sort of snaking area of showers and storms throughout the plain states and on up into Wyoming, also down into New Mexico. We've got some showers and some snow in the higher elevations. And here's your moisture coming in to the Pacific Northwest. And incidentally, I did leave it up just to show you the severe weather risk. The risk for thunderstorms here along the East Coast with that upper low. We've got that slight risk of severe, as we pointed out, as the GFS points out, for later today and tonight in through southeast Kansas, Oklahoma, into Missouri. Marginal to slight risk for severe weather there. Little patch of marginal risk in North Texas on the Oklahoma Panhandle, and the general risk for thunderstorms running all the way up through the Rockies. So let's look at what the West has to say, because we've been showing the continual storminess here in the West, with low pressure developing tonight in Oklahoma. So there's a lot of rain and snow going up the Rockies from northern New Mexico all the way up through Montana. And then that storm pulls out. The next one comes into the Northwest and drops down with more rain and snows for parts of the Rockies going into the end of the week and into the weekend. And we have a low developing in Texas itself over the weekend, and that shows some snows. There have been some indications of maybe some heavier snows in the central and southern mountains of Colorado into New Mexico. It's not as bullish as it was in the prior few runs, but it's still there. And then that pulls away, still getting systems into the Northwest, although they appear to be a little weaker, but eventually translating. And now we're into May 3rd, yet another storm for the central Rockies. Not a big one, but enough to produce some rain and snows through the central and northern Rockies there, and on up into the northern plains as another low comes out of the central plains and heads for the Great Lakes when we look at that East Coast profile. And then it's kind of quiet. It quiets down a bit as we go through the latter part of the period. Still, though, some activity on up through the central Rockies, but it looks like at least the west calms down a bit, and weather systems tend to get a little bit weaker over time. So a quick look at the upper air pattern. When the weather gets like this, there's not a whole lot of change from day to day with respect to what the upper air pattern is going to show us. We've been talking about this blocking signature, and it appears to be there. Let me just roll back when we look at the upper air. So here's our, weather system that's coming up now along the East Coast. And you can see how that upper low just kind of disappears over time because of that big ridge that's building into the east. Deep troughing out through the central part of the U.S. out toward the west. Lower pressures up in the poles, so you get, this favors a warmer flow along the East Coast with a ridge in the east. Here it goes, popping up for the weekend. deep trough out in the west, so a lot of energy there. Now, over time, we're starting to see higher than normal pressures building up around Greenland, so that's going to be something to watch because eventually that drops the trough in the eastern part of the United States, which is what the model's indicating. And in fact, by May 3rd or 4th, that upper high really gets very strong here over Greenland. There's a pretty strong blocking pattern that develops for now we're at May 6th, 7th. So the model's been kind of hinting at this for a number of days. That's a pretty strong blocking signature. And I think that would translate to cooler and wetter weather in the eastern part of the United States in general, and perhaps an increased threat for severe weather for areas at least away from the immediate coast where the ocean wind is still going to take thunderstorms and basically weaken them and rip them apart. So we've got a lot of interesting little things to look at going forward. In the meantime, I'll be looking at the heavier rains that we'll get in here in the Northeast this afternoon into tonight on the order of about 1 to 2 inches, and then we'll get that done, and then we'll see weather conditions improve as we go through the rest of the week. Okay, website at meteorologistjoechaffee.com, nycweathernow.com, where Angry Ben has all the latest for New York City. Download my app and subscribe to my forecast for just 99 cents a month for New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Hudson Valley, and Connecticut. And of course, thank you for all of you who are on my YouTube channel. If you've lasted through an almost 17-minute video, then I think you must really like it. So please become a subscriber to my YouTube page. It's absolutely free. Just hit the red subscribe button on the channel page, and you'll get notified anytime a new video comes up, which is usually once a day. Website posts, you can link from those on my Facebook page, meteorologistjoechaffee.com, JoeCioffi. Everybody have a great and safe rest of your Tuesday.